The technical interview. Ugh, right? Just hearing those words can make your stomach drop. It feels like your entire career gets put under a microscope for one super high pressure hour. We've all seen really, really smart people just crumble in those moments. But here's the thing, what if the problem isn't about being a genius? What if it's just about having a game plan? What if you could walk into that room with a system ready to handle any question they throw at you? Let's crack that code.
So, picture this. You're in the hot seat. The interviewer leans in and asks, how would you design an alarm clock for the blind? Okay, so your mind starts racing, right? Braille, voice commands, maybe some kind of haptic feedback. The pressure is on, and a million ideas are all fighting for attention at once. It's a classic question, and it's designed to see how you think. And trust me, the way you start your answer is everything. And that's it. That's the trap. Most people just jump right in. They start improvising. They grab the very first idea that pops into their head and just start talking, kind of hoping a brilliant answer will magically build itself in midair. But look, that approach almost always leads to rambling. You end up burying the good stuff and completely missing the key details the interviewer is actually listening for.
So, to avoid that trap, we're going to build a mental toolbox. First, we'll take a hard look at the improvisation trap itself. Then, we'll talk about the solution, thinking with frameworks. And finally, we'll stock our toolbox with 3 incredibly powerful models: the Think Aloud Protocol, the Circles method for those tricky design questions, and the STAR method for talking about your own experience. So, what is this trap, really? Well, when you're put on the spot, your gut instinct is to just fill the silence. But when you improvise, you're trying to do 2 really hard things at once: structure your thoughts and communicate them clearly. That cognitive overload is exactly why perfectly good answers come out as a jumbled mess. You might know all the right things, but if the interviewer can't follow your logic, it just doesn't count.
An improvised answer feels like a tangled mess of yarn, but when you use a framework, that same information becomes a clean, logical path. The facts might be the same, but it's the clarity that makes all the difference. This shows you can handle complex ideas, and honestly, that's the real skill they're testing.
Okay, so what's the fix? It's all about thinking with frameworks. You can think of them like mental scaffolding, pre-built structures that help you organize your thoughts when you're under pressure. Instead of panicking and trying to invent a structure from scratch, you just pick the right tool for the job. And this doesn't just make your answer better, it gives you a massive confidence boost because you know you have a process to fall back on. And this right here, this is the core mindset shift you have to make. An interview isn't some chaotic, scary test. It's a game with rules. It's a predictable, structured interaction. The specific questions might change, yeah, but the patterns underneath, they don't. Interviewers are always looking for clear, structured thinking. Once you get that, the whole thing becomes less about fear and more about solving a puzzle.
All right, time to open up that toolbox. First tool up, the Think Aloud Protocol. This is your absolute secret weapon for live coding challenges or any kind of on-the-spot problem solving. See, the goal isn't just to get the right answer. It's to show the interviewer how you got there. You're making your thought process totally transparent.
This is called cognitive transparency, and it's so important. An interviewer is basically trying to figure out if hiring you is a good bet. When you work in silence, they're just guessing. Are you a genius? Are you totally lost? By thinking out loud, you give them a window right into your brain. You're narrating the journey, which is way more valuable than just showing them the destination. And the process is pretty simple. First, you clarify the problem. Ask questions. Then, you state your assumptions. Okay, so I'm going to assume this needs to handle X. As you solve, you're just talking through your logic one step at a time. But this last step, evaluate, this is where you really stand out. You critique your own work. You know, this approach works, but it might be slow if we have a lot of data. That shows a level of maturity that most candidates just don't have. Okay, so that handles live problem solving. But what about those big, broad design questions, like our alarm clock? For those, we need a different tool. Let me introduce you to the Circles method. It's a framework specifically designed to take a huge, vague prompt and break it down into a really comprehensive, structured answer. And the real magic of Circles is its logic. Notice how you don't even think about solutions until step 5. You start with the situation, the users, their needs. You actually prioritize what matters most before you start brainstorming. This process stops you from making that classic mistake, jumping straight to a solution before you've even really defined the problem. So let's take this back to our alarm clock. Using Circles, you wouldn't just list random features. You'd ask, okay, who's the user here? Is it an elderly person who's losing their sight? Or a teenager who's been blind their whole life? Their needs are totally different, right? Maybe one needs big tactile buttons and the other needs amazing voice control. You'd think about that, and then you'd prioritize, saying something like, for a first version, let's nail voice control for accessibility. Boom, your answer is suddenly strategic and all about the user.
And finally, let's get to the most common interview questions of all. You know the ones. Tell me about a time when. These aren't about what you would do, they're about what you did. To answer them well, you need the STAR method.
It's the perfect framework for turning a simple story into hard evidence of your skills. STAR stands for Situation, Task, Action, and Result, and it is the absolute gold standard for recruiters. You start by briefly setting the situation and the task you had. Then, and this is the most important part, you describe the specific actions you took, and you finish with the result, making sure to use numbers whenever you possibly can. It's a simple formula that tells a really powerful story. Now here's a pro tip for using STAR. You have to avoid this situation trap. That's when you spend most of your time describing the problem and only a few seconds on what you actually did. You gotta flip that. The A for action should be the hero of your story. A good rule of thumb? Your action should be at least 60% of your answer. That's what they actually care about. Let's see how it sounds for a question about conflict. Situation. A key developer on my team and I had a major disagreement on the roadmap, and we had a client deadline looming. Task. My goal was to meet that deadline without crushing the morale of a really important team member. Action. So I scheduled a one-on-one. I made sure to listen to all their concerns, and then I negotiated a compromise. Notice all the I statements. You have to own the action. Result? It worked out great. We shipped on time, the developer felt heard, and as a bonus, we actually improved system performance. Did you catch that last part? Improved system performance by 15%? That little number is what takes an answer from good to unforgettable. A specific, quantifiable result is just so much more credible and memorable. It proves you made a real impact. Always look for that number. Time saved, money earned, efficiency gained to anchor your story. So when you put it all together, think aloud, circles, STAR, you see that they're all designed to trigger one big shift in your mindset. When you use them, you stop being a passive applicant who's just there to answer questions. You become a strategic partner, actively showing them how you solve problems. You're showing, not just telling, the value you're going to bring to their team. So the next time you walk into an interview, don't think of it as an interrogation. Think of it as a stage. The interview is a performance of professional identity. These frameworks, they're your script. They let you control the story, they let you showcase your strengths, and they help you deliver a performance that proves you're not just qualified for the job, you're the solution they've been searching for.